Welcome to a team selection video for Matchday 4, the round of 16, and I did make a first draft video. I recorded it yesterday straight after all the fixtures were done, and now I've had a bit more time to kind of analyse the best options from different teams. And a lot of new names came about in Matchday 3, but it's always important to not overreact and just base it off one performance and then just go for certain players. I think you have to look at the whole tournament. So for example, Yarmolenko, who blanked in Matchday 3, he's been fantastic across the first two match days, so he's still someone worth considering. But yeah, the league code is in the top of your screen. You can join it, and there's also a link in the description below, and as soon as you click it, you join the league, so be sure to do that. In terms of Matchday 3, I'll be talking about it very briefly. I got 59 points, I've got 184 overall, and I'm around 87,000 in the world. And to be honest, I'm very disappointed because a lot of key decisions, 50-50 decisions in Matchday 2 and 3 have cost me, and it is what it is. Sometimes this happens. Of course, I did get some things right. For example, the captaincy on Perisic, 20 points, and that pretty much saved my week. Otherwise, I could have been looking at a disastrous Matchday 3, and to be fair, it was still very average, just like Matchday 2 was. But on the whole, some returns from Havertz, Marlon, Kevin De Bruyne, Toloi and Stecklenburg, and then Unai Simon and Pau Torres on my bench, but everyone else blanked. So very underwhelming across the board. And a lot of the players I had in my normal team, such as Mela, Depay, Cristiano Ronaldo, they all scored. So yeah, it wasn't ideal. It wasn't a great week. And I think on the whole, I think a lot of people were wildcarded. Probably not too happy with that, and anyone who has saved it is in a great position to use it in the quarterfinals and beyond, and can maybe take a few more risks with this team for Matchday 4. But yeah, pretty much I'm not going to speak too much more about Matchday 3. I did kind of allude to certain things in my first draft video for Matchday 4. So let's just talk about the round of 16 and how my team is looking. I've made several changes, and just to highlight them for anyone who did watch that video, Stecklenburg is in, and I talked about him coming into my side. And remember, you can have up to 4 players from the same nation now, and of course it increases as we progress through the tournament. It's something I didn't make clear in my first draft video, but it's clear now. You can have up to 4 players. So teams like Italy, the Netherlands, with their run potentially to the semi-final, I think it's worth tripling or even quadrupling up, but it's of course very risky. Upsets can happen, as I discussed before, but Stecklenburg, I think at 4.7 million, probably one of the best keepers you can get. And even if you do have Dumfries already, Czech Republic is a fixture where they could keep a clean sheet in, and perhaps if they do reach the quarterfinals, Wales or Denmark, that could be another clean sheet in the process. So yeah, I think Stecklenburg for 4.7 million, you don't want to overcomplicate it too much, but of course a lot of people are going for Ward from Wales, and also Olsen, who's around 5 million, 5.1 million for Sweden, but I think Stecklenburg around that price range is the standout. And then Donnarumma, I've discussed them before, but Italy are one of those teams that I'm just confident in defensively. I'd like to double up on their assets, and that's what I'm doing right now with Spinazzola too. And Austria is a great opportunity for Italy to extend their clean sheet run to 11 and their unbeaten run overall, which is already fairly impressive. So Donnarumma is in, and I think I'll be keeping him. And as for my defence, Spinazzola, yeah, I think he's just one of the best options, and he didn't even play Matchday 3, otherwise he could pretty much be the top scoring defender of the entire game, but it doesn't matter anyway. Great fixture in Austria, and potentially, I mean, this is where it gets a bit more difficult. Italy could have a very tough run from the quarterfinal onwards, but the round of 16, I think it's a good fixture for them, and Spinazzola could be fantastic. As for Mela, I mean, I talked about his attacking potential before, and unfortunately I didn't keep him for Matchday 3, but yeah, I mean, with Denmark, I'm not that convinced by their defence, but they do face Wales, and I think there could be quite a few goals in that game. Mela offers plenty of attacking threat, as we saw in match days 2 and 3. Of course, there was no returns against Belgium, but he showed what he could do, and he finally did it against Russia. So I think Mela at 4.5 million, probably the best option. There is Pau Torres as well to consider, but I mean, there's also the kind of question mark, which I also alluded to in my first draft video. Is it going to be Eric Garcia or Pau Torres now in the starting lineup to partner Laporte? So that's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, with Mela, I think he's a good option at 4.5. And then Dumfries, yeah, I mean, you see his attacking potential. It's insane. He can win penalties, get assists, score goals, and he seems to be enjoying himself this tournament. He's the standout right back so far. So Dumfries, I don't think really is too much of an issue. I know he's 5.6 million, so he is fairly expensive. But with the fixtures potentially in this round and then also the quarterfinals, it could be very, very good to have him. And then as for Pau Torres, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure about him, and he could be changed. And maybe I'll go back to an England defender like Maguire or Stones. But at the moment, I do have Pau Torres just to be able to fund the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. But yeah, Pau Torres is in. Croatia's a difficult game, to be fair, but still, I do like Spain's defence, and I think they're resilient. Even in the games where they struggled in, their defence was fairly solid. They keep clean sheets on a regular basis, so not too concerned with him. Kimpembe, and now this is the thing with French assets, and I didn't have any in my first draft, and it's because you look at all of the assets overall, and there's not any standouts, and it's not like there's any kind of FPL or should I say fantasy league point machines in there. And the highest scoring player I believe is Hernandez with 9 points, and there's a reason for that, and there's a bit of rotation in there at times, at least with the left backs. But with Digne out, Lucas Hernandez should have that left back spot nailed. And then you look at kind of the forward positions, different players can score goals, and France have been a bit conservative, I think, in this tournament. They haven't shown their full attacking potential. We haven't seen that free-flowing style that they could do if they wanted to. They have the quality, but either way, with France, they have a good all-round squad, but not necessarily maybe standout fantasy options, at least in the defence and midfield. But Kimpembe is the cheapest way into France's defence. You could also go for Lloris in goal if you wish, but he's a bit more expensive. But either way, I think Kimpembe is just decent enough, and there's not a huge difference between him and Pavard and Lucas Hernandez's points potential in order to justify the extra 0.45 or maybe even 1 more million with the example of Lucas Hernandez. But yeah, Kimpembe I think is a good option. As for the midfield, yeah, there's been just one change, I think, or 2 changes. Now, I'll just highlight the elephant in the room immediately, Højbjerg. Now, like I said before, do not overreact because he had a great performance in Matchday 3 and got 2 assists, and he got an assist in Matchday 2. I know he is obviously, for Spurs anyway, he's a defensive midfielder. He's not known for his goals or assists, but he's the top assister so far in this tournament. And to be honest, if I had the money, I would move to Damsgaard instead from Denmark. With this team, I only have 0.2 million remaining, so I could go for Locatelli instead or someone else under 5.7 million. But the problem is, of course, I'm just not really a big fan of these assets. So Damsgaard, for example, Joshua Kimmich, Sarabia, around the 6 million mark, I'd be very interested in them. But the likes of Højbjerg and Locatelli and the others, I'm not convinced by. But at the moment, Højbjerg is in there. He's pretty much just a budget bench option, but yeah, he could be changed for sure, and a lot of it depends on Ronaldo, and I'll be talking about him later on. But yeah, just to address that, I'm not overreacting because he's got 3 assists in his last 2 games and obviously got 8 points in Matchday 3. It's literally just a budget option, and I don't really want him if I'm being honest. But Berardi, he is someone I do want. I wanted him from Matchday 1, I highlighted him, and he's been very good ever since. Didn't play Matchday 3, he should start against Austria, and yeah, Berardi's just a fantastic budget enabler, and he's always been one of the better options around his price, so not really too many complaints about him. Now Forsberg, he's someone who's grown into the tournament, and he scored twice against Poland, and he was also instrumental against Slovakia, so he's been very important for Sweden. Now there is also Kulusevski. You could also go for him. He's cheaper. He got 2 assists against Poland, so there are different options you can go for in Sweden in particular. But I think the likes of Isaac, for example, who a lot of people had high expectations for in terms of fantasy points, they just haven't delivered. Maybe he will in the round of 16, but I think Forsberg and Kulusevski have shown that they probably are worth the investment, and in attack you can maybe spend a bit more money, or if not, go for alternatives like Yaremchuk. But I think Forsberg from Sweden is the standout, then it's probably Kulusevski, and I think maybe a Swedish defender like Augustinsson or Danielsson or even Olsen in goal. I think they are great options too for the round of 16. And Kevin De Bruyne, he's in. I know a few of you actually asked me, why is Kevin De Bruyne not in your first draft? And I already explained that if I do have Lukaku, I don't want to have De Bruyne also because they're facing Portugal. And if Belgium do go through, it doesn't get any easier. They have to face Italy. And then after that, potentially France in the semi-finals, of course. You compare that, for example, to the likes of Memphis Depay or Wijnaldum, and you see their side of the draw and how they could get to the semi-finals. It's much easier. So that's why I don't want to have a double up in terms of De Bruyne and Lukaku. But I think I like this balance which I have. So having, for example, double Netherlands attack, having Ronaldo, having De Bruyne, having Forsberg, and then Berardi. I just really like that combination. Of course, Højbjerg, I already discussed him. He's just not really an option. He's not someone I want. But yeah, the rest I'm very, very happy with. And speaking of Gini Wijnaldum, he's just very intelligent, and the 2 fixtures he has coming up potentially, if Netherlands do win those games, are just sensational. And I think Wijnaldum could be fantastic value once again. And yeah, around 8.1 million. I mean, he's just increasing in price, or should I say increasing in terms of selection every single time I load the game. So there's a reason for that, and Wijnaldum is a fantastic pick. And as for my attack, last but not least, I've only made one change, and that is Benzema in for Lukaku, and that facilitates the De Bruyne move in midfield, and then changing a few other things such as Kimpembe coming in my defence. But yeah, I'll be honest, Karim Benzema, he did obviously do really well in matchday 3, and he had a lot of chances in the first 2 match days, but he just didn't convert them. What I do like about Benzema is that he's on penalties and that he's getting the majority of France's chances, and he's also the cheapest out of him, Griezmann and Mbappe. And I just don't know if the other 2, Mbappe and Griezmann, are worth that extra million or 2 million on top of Benzema, but that's something that we have to see. I'm still not really that convinced by Benzema in general. His Euros record is pretty awful, but of course against Portugal he did put things right to a certain extent with those 2 goals. He was man of the match, and if he has those sort of performances with that level of finishing, then of course he's going to be a fantastic asset and probably one of the best in the knockout stages. But yeah, Karim Benzema, just to target that Switzerland fixture also, and yeah, definitely don't want to be having Shaqiri for that. Oh well, to be fair, you never know. Shaqiri has burned me in the past. As for the other 2, I've already discussed them. I don't want to talk about them too much more, but one thing I will say, I've seen a lot of hate obviously to Ronaldo, saying that 3 of his 5 goals were penalties, and yeah, fair enough. Against France, he didn't do much else other than the penalties, but if you look at his performance against Germany in matchday 2, he was sensational, and he got the goal, he got the assist. And Ronaldo can just score all types of goals. Yeah, he scores a lot of tap-ins and a lot of penalties, but he gets the goals, and that's what you want, right? You want to get the points, and he is facing Belgium, and if they do go through, they potentially face Italy, and then maybe France. So it's a very tough route to the final for Portugal, and everyone concerned on that side of the draw. But Cristiano Ronaldo from Portugal, he's just been sensational at 36 years of age to go at the levels he is right now. It just shows how good he is. So, you know, as much as you can hate him or, you know, kind of doubt certain things, he gets points at the end of the day. So yeah, there might be the likes of Immobile, for example, who has Austria. You could go for him and save a bit of money and spend that elsewhere, and I'll be discussing kind of some alternatives for my team. But Ronaldo is still a fantastic option. Never rule him out, and that's something I've learned time and time again for sure. And then Memphis Depay, I mean, just look at the 2 fixtures I discussed with Netherlands. I think it's worth tripling or quadrupling up, and Depay is the best player for the Netherlands as a fantasy asset in my opinion. So yeah, not too many more comments I think are needed for Depay, and yeah, that's pretty much good to go. I really like this team. The only kind of problem is Højbjerg, I think, but the rest I'm very, very happy with. And in terms of, you know, kind of alternatives I can do, so I'll show you right now. So Ronaldo could make way potentially, and I'll be honest, I don't like the kind of striker options other than Immobile. I could maybe go for Moreno from Spain or someone like that, maybe Yaremchuk, but apart from that, I probably wouldn't want to look at the other striker options. So that would give me 2.3 million, and immediately I'd want to improve Højbjerg. And what I could do there is potentially go to Sarabia in the midfield, so something like that. And then with the remaining funds I have, 1.3 million, I can use that to upgrade Pau Torres to a 5.9 million defender. And what I could do maybe is go for an England defender. I already talked about how impressive I found England's defence to be, and they've only conceded I think 1 big chance across the group stages, and they've just been solid defensively. So yeah, I could go for John Stones, for example, or Harry Maguire, and yeah, I'd only have 0.3 million remaining, but that's something that I could do. And if not, instead of Sarabia, I could have Moreno up front, and then yeah, in the midfield to kind of cover someone else. I mean, there's different ways to play about it. Let's actually check it just in case. So let's go with Moreno, and that would give me 3.8 million on top of that. I could maybe go for maybe Hazard or Sterling. I probably wouldn't want to go for Hazard, to be honest. The fixture's too difficult, and I haven't seen enough from him to really warrant an inclusion into my team. But yeah, 10.3 million. I have the pick of the bunch. I could go for Sterling, for Perisic, for Yarmolenko, and I'd still have a bit of money left over. So yeah, there are different ways I can go about this. And yeah, maybe instead of Stones, I can go for Jordi Alba, for example, and cover them that way. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below about my team. What do you think is the best scenario to finish off this video, I just want to go through some of the other options and highlight them. The ones that I don't have, but they are still valuable options and you could go for them in your team. So I'm going to kind of break it down by position, and I'll try to keep this brief. I don't want to give long descriptions or whatever. I'll just highlight the players, and then of course if you want more insight, you can join me in my deadline stream and also just contact me through YouTube, Twitter or Instagram. But in terms of goalkeepers, I already talked about Donnarumma. I think Pickford is probably one of the better options. So if you don't want to have, for example, John Stones or Harry Maguire, and you don't like the rotation with the fullbacks like I do, then maybe you could go for Pickford, and he's a bit of a set and forget. But I personally wouldn't go with Pickford, but I just think he's a good option in terms of the goalkeepers. Olsen, I've already talked about him. I think he's a good one with the Ukraine fixture in mind. I don't see Sweden going beyond the quarterfinal stages, but I think Olsen could be very good for the round of 16. And then I think Courtois, I'd probably avoid him. But looking at the others, Unai Simon, I think he's good, at least for the round of 16. And if you obviously aren't really too sure about Pau Torres, you don't want to spend 6.1 million on Laporte or Jordi Alba, then I think Unai Simon is definitely decent. I think Ward's alright, he's not too bad, and he could maybe do something against Denmark, but ultimately I probably would just have him as a budget second keeper, but having a main guy like Unai Simon, Donnarumma, or even Stecklenburg. But yeah, Danny Ward, obviously, if he's your main keeper and you have like a backup, don't do that. I think he has to be your second keeper. Otherwise, just forget him. I don't really see, if I'm being honest, Wales keeping a clean sheet. So with him, you're going to be relying on save points, most likely. So that's something I will say. With Danny Ward, I don't expect a clean sheet. I could be completely wrong about that, but I think he'll just get save points, if anything. And then looking at the others, I'd probably just be ignoring them, all of them. So yeah, looking at all of them. Lloris, potentially, just because he's a bit of, well, he's nailed in the France side. And despite his errors against Portugal, he's going to continue to start. He's the captain. And if you don't want to spend too much money in your defenders, like Kimpembe, Pavard, Lucas Hernandez, etc., you could just go for Hugo Lloris. But I'll be honest, I think the others I mentioned, Donnarumma, Unai Simon, Olsen, and Stecklenburg, I think they are better overall. And then, yeah, I'd probably be avoiding Neuer. I don't like Germany's defence. And as for the rest, I expect them to be eliminated. So yeah, that's pretty much kind of my roundup in terms of the keepers. And I ultimately wouldn't be looking at any of the other goalkeepers that I haven't mentioned there. If I have forgotten someone, then let me know. But I don't believe that there are any others that are just really stand out. As for defenders, I think even Laporte is a good one. And of course, he does have a bit of goal for it. He scored against Slovakia, similar goal to what he did in the Carabao Cup final against Spurs. But ultimately with Laporte, you probably want to have Jordi Alba instead. I think Jordi Alba should have at least 2 assists in this tournament. And he's been a bit hard done by, I think. Or at least should I say 2 more assists than what he has. And Thomas Meunier is still a good one, but because he's facing Portugal, I'd probably be avoiding him. I think with that money, you could be spending it on Dumfries, on Jordi Alba, on Laporte, and even a French defender, for example. So I'd probably be avoiding Thomas Meunier for now. But of course, he's always got that attacking potential. He could even get a goal against Belgium, or should I say against Portugal. He could even get a goal or an assist against Portugal. So that's just something to consider. John Stones, I talked about him before. I'd probably be looking at him, Maguire or Pickford for England defence. Luke Shaw is a bit interesting. I like his attacking potential. I just don't like the fact that he could be rotated at any time for Trippier if Southgate wants a bit more experience and also set piece taking abilities. And also he could just go for Ben Chilwell. So I don't like that about Luke Shaw personally. Daley Blind, to be fair, he is nailed in that Netherlands defence, but once again, if you already have Stecklenburg and Dumfries, that's enough, I think. So maybe you could just be avoiding him. And I probably wouldn't be going for Van Aanholt. I think you can find or spend your money better elsewhere. And then Gossens, I mean, I'll be honest, he's got a lot of attacking potential. He could get a goal or an assist, even against England. But I just don't like Germany's defence. And I'm definitely going to be avoiding personally, unless Germany continue to advance and they start shoring up things at the back. And apart from that, I mean, this is when it gets a bit more difficult, but a French defender, I think, Kimpembe, Pavard, Lucas Hernandez, depends on how much you are willing to spend in that position. Varane's another one who's nailed, and he has a bit of goal threat. But yeah, other than that, it just gets a bit more difficult. You get into these grey areas. What I would say about Italy, though, is obviously they play first. You have the benefit of seeing the lineup before obviously the deadline passes. So if you don't have Donnarumma, you could double up with Italy defenders. You could have Spinazzola and maybe Toloi or Di Lorenzo. I'd be looking at them more than anyone else. So depending on who starts between those two, I think you should go for them, and I think they would be fantastic assets. But apart from that, I don't want to be kind of just saying names for the sake of it, but I think, for example, when you look at Sweden, Augustinsson or Danielsson, you could go for them as well. I think there is a clean sheet potential in there for Sweden, so just bear that in mind. I wouldn't be going for Portugal assets. I probably wouldn't be going for Denmark assets apart from Mæhle. And then from Belgium, you could maybe go for one of the cheaper ones like Denayer, but there is a bit of rotation going on there. And I already said this before, I do expect Portugal and Belgium to be a fairly even contest, and there could be goals from both sides, so that's just a really difficult game to call in general. But yeah, all of the best defenders pretty much, I have mentioned them, and if there are any more, once again, tell me in the comment section below. As for midfielders, of course, this is where maybe there are more options, and there probably will be some that I forget. Never underestimate Shaqiri, I guess. I know he's facing France, but if anyone's going to do anything for Switzerland, it will be Shaqiri. Yarmolenko, I know he blanked in matchday 3, but look how good he's been throughout the tournament. And if Ukraine do something, it's definitely going through Yarmolenko, and his record for Ukraine is just insane. So definitely don't underestimate him. And then I'd be looking at Sarabia, as I discussed before. He could be coming into my team. From Germany, I think Kai Havertz is a standout. I still like Gnabry. His record for Germany has been insane, but of course, he hasn't scored yet or even gotten an assist throughout this tournament. So I'm a bit concerned about Gnabry, but he's still a good option. Raheem Sterling, of course, he's been carrying England. He's scored all their goals. Jota's alright, but I wouldn't be going for him. Luka Modric, I'd just go for Perisic instead, if I'm being honest. I think if anyone does something for Wales, it'll be Ramsey or Bale. So they're both good options, and I think Bale is probably slightly better. He's a bit more explosive, and I think he's got a bit more to his locker with the assists and the goals, and if he's still on penalties, which we'll see. And I think as a budget option, Zuba, I mean, he showed what he can do with his hat-trick of assists, and he could have gotten even more. And I have to say, his end product at times was poor against Turkey, despite how well he played, should I say, because there were times he could have scored, or he could have given a pass to Mbolo, for example. But yeah, he's just someone that could be a good cheap option. But honestly, around 6 million or 7 million, I'd be looking at Kulusevski, Kimmich, Damsgaard, Sarabia. There's a few other options, so I probably wouldn't be going for him, but he's just someone kind of worth highlighting. There's a reason why he got 11 points. It's not a fluke, I think. And as for the others, I think Insigne, a lot of people will be going for him. I won't, I think. I could change my mind on that, but Insigne is still a good option, as he showed in matchday 1, and we'll see how he does. But yeah, Insigne is always an interesting one. And apart from that, Pogba, I probably would be avoiding him. And I know France will probably go far in this tournament, but Paul Pogba's ceiling, I think, is low. So I probably wouldn't be going there with Paul Pogba. And other than that, I think I'd just be not really recommending too much of the others. But yeah, Damsgaard, I did mention him. I would definitely be considering him. I wish I had enough money to go from Højbjerg to Damsgaard. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. But maybe it will with 1 or 2 changes to my side. But yeah, once again, any other midfielder options, let me know. And of course, I'll be happy to discuss that. In terms of the strikers, this is where it's a bit clearer. There's not as many options in my opinion. Patrick Schick is alright, but I probably wouldn't be going for him. I back Netherlands to win that game, and they could even keep a clean sheet. Ronaldo, don't underestimate him. We've been through this. Depay, Lukaku, I would still back him to do well in this tournament. And if they do go through, I think Lukaku could be a very big shout to win the Golden Boot, as I've said multiple times before. Yaremchuk, I know he blanked in matchday 3, and Ukraine looked very poor against Austria, but I do like Yaremchuk and Yarmolenko. They're both good options, and they're the only two I'd look at from Ukraine. And then Ciro Immobile, I think in this fixture against Austria, this is where he could really haul big. The problem is, if Italy do go through, I'm not that sure or confident in Immobile going forward with the opposition that Italy will be coming up against. But in this game against Austria, I think Immobile could be one of the best options this week. But going forward as a long-term option, not so sure. So that's something just to bear in mind. Poulsen's a good one. I've seen people going for him, and he's a good option, no doubt about it. Moreno, I've discussed before. Seferovic for Switzerland has been alright, but I just wouldn't be looking at him, to be honest. And despite how well Daniel Malen has been playing in the last 2 match days with 2 assists, I think it could be Workhorse once again, and Frank de Boer, he loves giving away his kind of team plans and news. He said that Workhorse could be coming back into the side for his kind of aerial threat and the way he holds up the ball. So just bear that in mind with Marlon. I'm not so sure about him. And then, yeah, apart from that, I probably would be avoiding most of the other strikers on offer. But yeah, in terms of the midfield, definitely there's a lot more options and there's more ones popping about with very good performances. But thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here, and appreciate all the support in all the videos. We've been getting a lot of views and a lot of interactions from all of you, so really appreciate it. And yeah, more content will be coming. A deadline stream will be coming along the way on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. And all the very best of luck with Euro Fantasy Football this week. And yeah, just enjoy the football. I'll see you next time.